The Shattered Mirror. Chapter 1. Calling the Darkness. The rain came down in sheets, a gray curtain that smeared the city into a watercolor blur. Elias Kane stood at the edge of the sidewalk, his trench coat heavy with water, the brim of his fedora tilted against the wind. The street lamp above flickered, casting jagged reflections on the wet asphalt, like a mirror cracked but not yet broken. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stared at the house across the street. Number 17, its Victorian silhouette looming like a ghost that refused to stay buried. 10 years, a decade since he'd last stood here, a rookie cop with a badge still shiny and a heart not yet scarred. The memory of that night clawed at him, sharp and unyielding, but he pushed it down. Memories were dangerous things, mirrors that showed you what you wanted to see, not what was real. And tonight, reality was a woman's body, sprawled in a locked room, blood pooling beneath her like spilled ink. The call had come at 2 a.m., jarring him from a sleep that was more whiskey than rest. His old precinct contact, Detective Marrow, hadn't bothered with pleasantries. Number 17, Elias, same as before. You'll want to see this. Marrow's voice had been clipped, urgent, but there was something else in it. Pity, maybe, or dread. Elias hadn't asked. He'd hung up, thrown on his coat, and driven through the storm to the place he'd sworn never to return. Now as he crossed the street, the gravel crunching under his boots, he felt the weight of it all. The house hadn't changed, same sagging porch, same warped shutters, same air of decay that clung like damp rot. The police tape fluttered in the wind, a yellow ribbon tying the past to the present. 2 uniformed officers stood guard at the door, their faces pale under the sodium glow. They nodded as he approached, recognizing him not by name but by reputation. The cop who'd burned out, the private eye who took cases no one else would touch. Upstairs, one of them muttered, stepping aside. 2nd floor, 3rd room on the left. Elias didn't respond. He climbed the stairs, each creak of the wood a whisper from 10 years ago. The air inside was thick, stale, laced with the metallic tang of blood. The hallway stretched before him, narrow and dim, the wallpaper peeling like old skin. He passed the first 2 doors, their frames dark with mildew, and stopped at the 3rd. The door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out, and through the gap he saw it, the body. She lay on her back, arms splayed, her white dress stained crimson from the knife wounds in her chest. The blade was still there, buried to the hilt, its handle gleaming under the chandelier's flicker. The room was locked from the inside, just like before. The window was bolted, the walls unmarred. No footprints, no signs of struggle, only the woman and her blood, and the mirror on the far wall, its surface unblemished, reflecting the scene like a silent witness. Elias stepped inside, his breath catching as the past rushed forward. 10 years ago, it had been another woman, another locked room, another knife. The official report had called it suicide, but Elias had never believed it. The angles were wrong, the wounds too precise, the scene too staged. He'd argued, pushed, dug deeper than he should have, and it had cost him his badge. Now standing in this room, he felt the same chill, the same certainty that something was watching him, mocking him through the glass. "Elias!" a voice called from behind. Detective Marrow, his bulk filling the doorway, his face lined with years and regrets. "You didn't have to come. You didn't have to call," Elias shot back, his voice low, gravelly from disuse. He knelt beside the body, careful not to disturb the scene. The woman was young, maybe mid-20s, her dark hair fanned out like a halo. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, and for a moment, Elias thought he saw something in them. Fear, yes, but also recognition, as if she'd known her killer. "Name's Clara Henshaw," Marrow said, reading from a notepad. 26, freelance writer. Lived alone, no known enemies. Neighbor heard a scream around midnight. Called it in. Door was locked when we got here. Had to break it down. Elias glanced at the door. The lock was old, heavy, the kind that didn't give without a fight. "No forced entry?" "None. Windows sealed too. Just like..." Marrow trailed off, his eyes flicking to the mirror. He didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew. Elias stood, his knees protesting, and approached the mirror. It was tall, ornate, its frame carved with vines that twisted like veins. He stared at his reflection, graying hair, sunken eyes, a face that carried too many ghosts. But it wasn't his face that held his attention. It was the room reflected behind him, the body, the blood, the knife. All of it was identical to that night 10 years ago, down to the angle of the blade, the spread of the limbs, the way the light caught the edge of the mirror. It wasn't just similar, it was deliberate. "Someone's playing games," Elias said, more to himself than to Marrow. "You think it's a copycat?" Marrow asked, his tone skeptical but not dismissive. Elias didn't answer. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a pair of gloves and snapped them on. He moved to the body, studying the wounds. 3 stab marks, clean and deep, forming a triangle over the heart, the same pattern as before. He checked her hands, no defensive wounds, no signs she'd fought back. Her nails were clean, her fingers relaxed, almost peaceful. Too peaceful. "Any prints?" he asked. "Still dusting," Marrow said, "but I'm betting we won't find any, just like last time." Elias nodded, his mind already racing. He stepped back, taking in the room as a whole. The furniture was sparse, a bed, a dresser, a single chair pushed against the wall. No personal touches, no photos, no signs of a life lived. It felt staged, like a set piece in a play no one had rehearsed. His eyes returned to the mirror, and for a moment he thought he saw something move in the reflection. A shadow, a flicker, gone before he could be sure. "You're seeing things," he muttered under his breath, but the words felt hollow. He'd seen things before, 10 years ago, in this same house. Shadows that didn't belong, reflections that didn't match. He'd written it off as stress, a rookie's nerves, but now he wasn't so sure. "Elias," Marrow said, his voice softer now, "you don't have to do this. You're not on the force anymore. Walk away." Elias turned, meeting Marrow's gaze. "You know I can't." Marrow sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "Yeah, I know." They stood in silence, the rain drumming against the roof, the mirror watching. Elias felt it again, that pull, that sense of being drawn into something larger, something that had been waiting for him all these years. He'd left the force to escape it, to bury the questions that had no answers. But here he was, staring into the same abyss. "I'll need access to the files," Elias said finally. "The old case, everything you've got." Marrow hesitated, then nodded. "I'll see what I can do. But Elias, be careful. This feels wrong." Elias didn't respond. He didn't need to. Wrong was an understatement. This was a message, a challenge, a mirror held up to his past. And whoever had sent it knew exactly what they were doing. He left the room, the weight of the house pressing against him as he descended the stairs. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, the air cold and sharp. He lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his face, and took a long drag. The smoke curled upward, blending with the fog, and for a moment he thought he saw the house reflected in the street's puddles. Number 17, its windows like eyes watching him. He turned away, but the image lingered. The mirror wasn't just in the room, it was everywhere. In the rain, in the shadows, in the memories he couldn't outrun. And somewhere behind the glass, someone was waiting. As he walked back to his car, the cigarette burning down to his fingers, Elias Kane made a promise to himself. He'd find the truth this time, no matter what it cost. Because if he didn't, the mirror would keep reflecting, and the darkness would keep calling his name. Chapter 2, The First Mirror. 10 years ago, the city didn't feel like a graveyard yet. The streets hummed with life, neon signs buzzing, and Elias Kane, barely 25, still believed justice was a straight line. His badge was new, polished to a shine, and he wore it like armor. But that night, standing outside number 17, the rain soaking through his cheap suit, he felt the first crack in that armor, a crack that would widen with every step he took into the house. The call had come just after midnight. A neighbor reported a scream, sharp and fleeting, from the old Victorian at the edge of town. By the time Elias and his partner, Detective Hargrove, arrived, the street was quiet, the house dark except for a single light burning on the second floor. The air was heavy, thick with the promise of something wrong, and Elias felt it in his gut. A twist, a warning, like the moment before a mirror shows you something you're not ready to see. "First case, kid," Hargrove had said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Don't screw it up." Hargrove was a veteran, all gruff voice and cigarette breath, his eyes carrying the weight of too many bodies seen, too many cases closed with questions unanswered. Elias nodded, swallowing his nerves, and followed him up the sagging porch steps. The door was unlocked, creaking open to reveal a foyer that smelled of dust and neglect. The wallpaper was faded, peeling in strips, and the air felt like it hadn't moved in years. "Upstairs," Hargrove said, pointing to the narrow staircase. "Neighbor said the scream came from there." Elias took the lead, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. Each step groaned under his weight, and the shadows seemed to shift, sliding across the walls like reflections in a warped mirror. He pushed the thought away. Nerves, he told himself. Just nerves. But when they reached the second floor, the third door on the left, he knew it was more than that. The door was locked. Hargrove banged on it, shouting, "Police! Open up!" No response. Elias pressed his ear to the wood, listening for any sound. A breath, a shuffle, anything. Nothing but silence, heavy and absolute. Hargrove nodded, and Elias kicked the door in, the old lock splintering under the force. Inside, the room was a frozen tableau. A young woman lay on the floor, her body still, her white dress stained with blood that had already begun to congeal. A knife protruded from her chest, its handle simple, unremarkable, but placed with a precision that felt wrong. Her arms were splayed, her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The window was bolted, the walls clean, no signs of a struggle. And on the far wall, a tall, ornate mirror stood, its surface reflecting the scene with cold clarity. "Jesus," Hargrove muttered, crossing himself. "What the hell happened here?" Elias didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were locked on the woman. Girl, really, no older than 20. Her name, he learned later, was Lila Voss, a college student with no record, no enemies, no reason to be dead in a locked room. He knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he checked for a pulse he knew he wouldn't find. Her skin was cold, her fingers curled slightly, as if reaching for something just out of grasp. "Suicide?" Hargrove said, more question than statement, his voice cutting through the silence. Elias shook his head, his eyes tracing the wounds. 3 stab marks forming a perfect triangle over her heart. The angles were too clean, the placement too deliberate. "No way she did this to herself," he said. "Look at the knife. It's too deep, too precise. And her hands, there's no blood on them." Hargrove grunted, unconvinced. "Locked room, no signs of entry. You tell me how someone else did this." Elias stood, his gaze shifting to the mirror. It was old, its frame carved with vines that seemed to pulse in the dim light. His reflection stared back, young, unscarred, but already haunted. Behind him, the room was mirrored perfectly. The body, the blood, the knife. But something felt off, like the reflection was showing more than it should. He stepped closer, his breath fogging the glass. And for a moment, he thought he saw a shadow move. Not his, not Lila's, something else. He blinked, and it was gone. "Kid," Hargrove said, pulling him back. "Focus. We need to call this in." The next hour was a blur. Crime scene texts, photographs, the coroner's van. Elias watched it all, his mind stuck on the mirror, on the wounds, on the locked door. By dawn, the official narrative was taking shape. Suicide. Lila Voss, troubled student, took her own life. Case closed. But Elias couldn't let it go. The pieces didn't fit, and the more he looked, the more they seemed to form a pattern he couldn't yet see. He started digging. Lila's life was quiet, unremarkable on the surface. Good grades, part-time job at a bookstore, no boyfriend, no drugs. But there was something else, something her roommate mentioned in passing. A group Lila had joined, a psychology club called The Mirrors. They met weekly, wrote journals, explored self-reflection under the guidance of a woman named Dr. Evelyn Morse. The roommate didn't know much, only that Lila had changed after joining. Quieter, more withdrawn, her eyes always searching, like she was looking for something in every reflective surface. Elias tracked down the group's meeting place, a community center on the edge of campus. The room was small, windowless, with a single round table and a dozen chairs. On the table sat a stack of notebooks, each labeled with a name. Lila's was there, its pages filled with tight, frantic handwriting. Elias flipped through it, his stomach tightening as he read. "The mirror shows me, but it's not me. It's her. She's always there, watching, waiting. She knows what I did." The words sent a chill through him. He read on page after page of cryptic entries about guilt, fear, and something called the reflection ritual. The last entry was dated the night she died. "I can't stop seeing her. She's in the glass, in my dreams, in my blood. I have to end it." Elias closed the notebook, his heart pounding. He didn't believe in ghosts or curses, but this wasn't just a diary. It was a confession, a cry for help, and it pointed to something darker than suicide. He confronted Dr. Morse the next day, finding her in a cramped office at the university. She was older than he'd expected, her hair silver, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Detective Kane," she said, her voice calm, measured. "I heard about Lila. Tragic, but not unexpected. She was fragile." "Fragile how?" Elias asked, leaning forward. "What was this group? The Mirrors? What were you doing with those kids?" Morse smiled, a thin, practiced curve of her lips. "Therapy, detective. We use journaling to explore their psyches, to confront their inner selves. Mirrors, you see, are powerful symbols. They show us who we are, or who we fear we might be." "And Lila? What did she see?" Morse's smile faded. "She saw what we all see eventually. The truth Elias pressed, but Morse gave him nothing more. She was too careful, her answers too polished." He left her office with more questions than answers, the notebook burning a hole in his coat pocket. That night, he sat in his apartment, the pages spread out before him, the words blurring together. "She's in the glass. She knows what I did." He didn't sleep. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lila's body, the knife, the mirror. The case was officially closed a week later. Suicide, the coroner ruled. No further investigation needed. Hargrove told him to let it go, to move on, but Elias couldn't. He started tailing Morse, watching her meetings, her routines. He broke into the community center late one night, searching for anything, records, notes, proof. He found nothing but a single photograph tucked inside a drawer. A group of students. Lila among them, standing in a circle around a mirror. Their faces were blank, their eyes hollow, and in the reflection, something seemed to shimmer. A shape, a shadow, too faint to name. He took the photo, his hands shaking. The next day, he was called into the precinct. His captain, a man with a voice like gravel and a temper to match, didn't mince words. "You're done, Kane. Obsessing over a closed case, harassing a professor? You're lucky I don't suspend you." Elias didn't argue. He turned in his badge, walked out, and never looked back. But the case followed him, a shadow in every mirror, a weight he couldn't shake. Lila Voss was gone, but her death wasn't the end. It was the beginning, the first crack in the glass. And Elias knew, even then, that the truth was still out there, waiting to be seen. Chapter 3. Familiar Faces. The city hadn't changed in 10 years, not really. The same gray skyline, the same pulse of traffic and neon, the same shadows pooling in the alleys where the streetlights didn't reach. But Elias Kane had changed. The man who stood outside the precinct now, his coat damp from the morning drizzle, was a ghost of the rookie who'd once walked these steps with a badge and a purpose. The mirror of memory showed him younger, sharper, unscarred. Now his reflection was all edges, gray hair, hollow eyes, a face carved by doubt and time. He'd spent the night after leaving number 17, poring over Clara Henshaw's case. The details burned into his mind like a photograph overexposed. The knife, the locked room, the 3 wounds forming a triangle over her heart. It was all too familiar, a reflection of Lila Voss's death a decade ago. The mirror on the wall had watched both scenes, silent and unyielding, and Elias couldn't shake the feeling that it held answers he wasn't ready to see. Detective Marrow had promised access to the old files, but Elias knew better than to wait. The precinct was a maze of bureaucracy, and time was a luxury he didn't have. So he'd started where he always did, with the victims. Clara Henshaw, 26, freelance writer. Lila Voss, 20, college student. Two women a decade apart, linked by a house, a knife, and a group called the Mirrors. The name had resurfaced in his mind like a splinter, sharp and persistent, and he needed to know why. His first stop was Clara's family. Her mother lived in a modest apartment on the city's east side, a place of faded curtains and worn furniture. Mrs. Henshaw was a small woman, her face lined with grief, her hands trembling as she clutched a photo of her daughter. She was a good girl, she said, her voice brittle. Never hurt anyone. Why would someone do this? Elias sat across from her, his notebook open but untouched. Did Clara ever mention a group called the Mirrors? He asked, keeping his tone neutral, though his pulse quickened at the name. Mrs. Henshaw frowned, her eyes distant. The Mirrors, yes. She talked about it once, years ago. Some club at her college. She said it was about writing, understanding herself. I thought it was harmless, just kids being kids. Which college? Elias pressed. Westbridge. She graduated 5 years ago. The name hit him like a cold wind. Westbridge was Lila Voss's school, the same place where the Mirrors had met a decade ago. He kept his expression steady, but inside his mind was racing. Two victims, same college, same group. Not a coincidence, not a copycat, something deeper, something deliberate. Did she keep a journal? He asked. Anything from that time? Mrs. Henshaw nodded, rising stiffly to retrieve a box from a closet. She handed him a leather-bound notebook, its edges frayed. She stopped writing in it after college, she said, but she kept it. Said it was important. Elias took the notebook, its weight heavy in his hands. He thanked her and left, the drizzle turning to rain as he stepped outside. In his car, he flipped through the pages, Clara's handwriting neat but urgent. The entries were mundane at first. Classes, friends, dreams of being a writer. Then halfway through, the tone shifted. The Mirrors showed me who I am. Not the me I show the world, but the one in the glass. She's different. She's angry. She knows what I've done. Elias's breath caught. The words echoed Lila's journal. The same cryptic fear, the same reference to a reflection that wasn't quite right. He read on, finding mentions of group meetings, a woman named Dr. Morse, and a ritual involving a mirror. The last entry was dated 5 years ago, just before Clara graduated. I left the Mirrors, but I can't leave her. She's still there watching. I see her every time I look in the glass. He closed the notebook, his hands steady but his mind anything but. Dr. Evelyn Morse. The name was a ghost from his past, the woman who'd led the Mirrors when Lila died. She'd vanished after the case, leaving no trace, no forwarding address. Elias had tried to find her back then, but the trail went cold. Now her name was back, tied to another dead girl, another locked room. His next stop was Lila's family. Her father, Henry Voss, lived alone in a small house on the city's outskirts. Elias hadn't seen him in 10 years, not since the funeral, where Henry's grief had been a quiet, crushing thing. Now the man who opened the door was older, thinner, his eyes clouded with resignation. Elias Kane, Henry said, his voice flat. I heard about the new girl. Same house, same way. You think it's connected? I know it is, Elias said, stepping inside. The house smelled of coffee and old books, the walls lined with photos of Lila, smiling, alive, a girl who'd never had the chance to grow old. Did Lila ever talk about a group called the Mirrors? Henry's face tightened. Yeah, she joined it her freshman year. Said it was about self-discovery, writing journals. I didn't think much of it until after, when I read her notebook. Elias leaned forward. What was in it? Fear, Henry said simply. She wrote about seeing things, feeling watched. She mentioned a woman, Dr. Morse, said she was kind but strange, like she knew too much. Did you keep the notebook? Henry nodded, retrieving it from a drawer. It was identical to Clara's. Leather-bound, worn, a relic of a life cut short. Elias didn't open it, not yet. He thanked Henry and left, the weight of 2 journals now heavy in his coat. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the world slick and reflective, every puddle a mirror showing fragments of the sky. Back in his apartment, Elias spread the journals side by side on his desk, the dim light of a single lamp casting long shadows. He read them together, cross-referencing dates, names, phrases. The similarities were uncanny. Both women described the mirrors as a psychological experiment, a group that promised self-understanding but left them haunted. Both mentioned Dr. Morse, her calm voice, her probing questions. Both wrote of a her in the mirror, a presence that wasn't them but knew their secrets. Elias leaned back, rubbing his eyes. The room felt smaller, the walls closer, as if the mirrors in his own life were closing in. He thought of number 17, the locked room, the knife. He thought of Lila's case, closed too quickly, and his own fall from grace. The system had failed her, and now it was failing Clara. But this time, he wouldn't let it go. He dug deeper, pulling out old notes from his days as a cop. Westbridge College's records were public, at least partially, and a quick search confirmed what he'd suspected. Clara and Lila had attended at the same time, overlapping for 1 year. They'd both been in the mirrors, part of the same group. He found a third name in Clara's journal, Sarah Klein, a friend mentioned in passing, also a member. Sarah was still alive, according to public records, working as a librarian in a nearby town. Elias drove out the next morning, the road winding through fog and fields. The library was small, its shelves packed with books that smelled of dust and time. Sarah Klein was behind the counter, a woman in her late 20s with nervous eyes and a habit of glancing at reflective surfaces. Windows, glass cases, even the polished countertop. "Sarah," Elias said, showing her a photo of Clara. "I need to talk about the mirrors." Her face paled, her hands gripping the counter. "I don't talk about that," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not anymore." "Clara's dead," Elias said, his tone flat but firm. "So is Lila Voss. You knew them both. I need to know what happened in that group." Sarah's eyes darted to the window, where her reflection stared back. "It was supposed to be therapy," she said finally. "Dr. Morse said we'd find ourselves, confront our fears. We wrote journals, did rituals with mirrors. She said the glass would show us the truth." "What truth?" Elias asked, leaning closer. Sarah swallowed, her voice trembling. "She said we all have a shadow self, a part we hide. The mirror would show it to us. But it wasn't just us in the glass. There was something else. Something that knew things about us. Things we never told anyone." Elias felt a chill, the same one he'd felt 10 years ago in number 17. "Did you see it? This something?" Sarah nodded, her eyes distant. "Once, during the last ritual. Lila was there, Clara too. We stood in a circle, staring into the mirror. Dr. Morse was chanting, guiding us. I saw a face, not mine, not anyone's. It smiled and I felt like it knew me, all of me. I ran after that, never went back." "And Dr. Morse?" Elias asked. "Where is she now?" Sarah shook her head. "She disappeared after Lila died. No one's heard from her since." Elias left the library with more questions than answers, Sarah's words echoing in his mind. The Mirrors wasn't just a club, it was a trap, a game played with minds and reflections. And Dr. Morse, whoever she was, had been at the center of it. He drove back to the city, the journals on the passenger seat, their pages whispering secrets he couldn't yet decipher. That night he stood in front of his own mirror, staring at the man he'd become. The glass showed him the truth, or part of it. A man haunted by a case that wouldn't die. A man who'd lost everything to find answers that might not exist. But behind his reflection, he felt it again. That flicker, that shadow watching from the other side of the glass. He turned away, but the mirror stayed with him, its surface holding more than his face. It held the past, the present, and something darker. A truth that was starting to take shape, piece by jagged piece. Chapter 4. Fractured Journal. 10 years ago, the world still felt like it could be fixed. Elias Kane, barely a month into his detective badge, carried the weight of Lila Voss's death like a stone in his chest. The precinct had moved on, stamping her case closed with the neat label of suicide. But Elias couldn't. The locked room, the knife, the mirror, they were pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit, reflecting a truth he couldn't yet see. Every night he returned to Lila's journal, its pages a map of fear and secrets, leading him to a group called The Mirrors. The community center on Westbridge College's edge was a squat, gray building, its windows fogged with age. Elias had been watching it for days, staking out the weekly meetings of the Mirrors from his unmarked car. The group met every Thursday at dusk, a handful of students slipping inside, their faces pale, their steps hesitant. Dr. Evelyn Morse was always the last to arrive, her silver hair catching the streetlights like a beacon. Elias didn't trust her. Her answers during their brief meeting had been too smooth, her smile too practiced, like a mirror reflecting only what she wanted him to see. Tonight, he wasn't here to watch. He'd waited until the group dispersed, the students scattering into the twilight, before slipping inside. The door was unlocked, the hallway dim, smelling of stale coffee and chalk dust. He moved quietly, his flashlight beam slicing through the shadows until he reached the meeting room. It was small, claustrophobic, with a single round table and a dozen chairs arranged in a circle. On the table sat a stack of journals, each labeled with a name. Lila's was gone, confiscated as evidence, but the others remained, their pages waiting to speak. Elias picked up a journal at random, its cover worn, the name Sarah Klein scrawled in sharp handwriting. He flipped it open, his eyes scanning the entries. The early pages were mundane, class schedules, crushes, anxieties about exams. But as he read further, the tone shifted, the words growing jagged, urgent. Dr. Morse says the mirror is a door. We have to open it, let the truth in. But I'm scared. What if the truth isn't mine? What if it's hers? Elias's pulse quickened. He grabbed another journal, this one belonging to a boy named Daniel Reed. The entries were similar, normal at first, then spiraling into fear. The reflection ritual is tonight. Dr. Morse says we'll see our real selves. I don't want to look. I don't want to know. The final entry, dated a week before Lila's death, was a single line. She's in the mirror now. She won't leave. He set the journal down, his hands steady but his mind racing. The Mirrors wasn't just a therapy group. It was something else, something that twisted minds, planted fears. Dr. Morse had called it self-discovery, but these journals read like confessions of people unraveling, their reflections turning against them. Elias searched the room looking for more. Notes, recordings, anything. He found a locked drawer in the table, its keyhole small and rusted. He didn't have a pick, so he used his pocket knife, prying until the wood splintered. Inside was a single item, a photograph, the same one he'd found before. A group of students standing in a circle around a mirror. Lila was there, her face pale, her eyes wide. Sarah Klein stood beside her, clutching her journal like a lifeline. And in the center, Dr. Morse, her expression calm but commanding, her hands resting on the mirror's frame. The reflection in the glass was faint, but Elias swore he saw something, a shadow, a shape, something that didn't belong. He pocketed the photo and left, the night air cold against his skin. Back in his apartment, he spread the journals and the photo on his kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows. He read until dawn, piecing together fragments of the Mirror's activities. The group met weekly, always at dusk, always in that windowless room. They wrote journals, shared them aloud, and performed what they called reflection rituals. Dr. Morse guided them, her voice described as soothing but relentless, pushing them to confront their deepest fears. The Mirrors were central, literal and symbolic, tools to see the self, as Morse put it. But the journals suggested something darker, a manipulation that left the students haunted, seeing things that weren't there. Elias tracked down Daniel Reed the next day, finding him in a dorm room cluttered with books and empty coffee cups. Daniel was lanky, nervous, his eyes darting to the window as Elias asked about the mirrors. "I quit after Lila died," Daniel said, his voice low. "It wasn't right. Dr. Morse, she made us look into the mirror, say things, think things. She said it was therapy, but it felt like she was inside my head." "What did you see?" Elias asked, leaning forward. "In the mirror." Daniel hesitated, his fingers twisting together. "Myself at first, then someone else. A version of me, but wrong. Angry, like it knew things I didn't want to admit." He swallowed. "Lila saw it too. She said it was a woman, not her, but she wouldn't talk about it. After the last ritual, she stopped coming to meetings. Then she was gone." Elias pressed for more, but Daniel clammed up, his fear palpable. Elias left, his mind turning over the boy's words. A woman in the mirror, the same phrase in the journals, the same fear in Sarah's eyes when he'd spoken to her years later. He needed to confront Morse again, but she was elusive, her office hours erratic, her presence like a shadow slipping through his fingers. He spent the next week digging deeper, cross-referencing the group's members. There were 12 in total, all students, all young, all vulnerable. One name stood out: Anna Gray, a freshman who'd attended only one meeting before vanishing. Her file listed her as a runaway, but Elias didn't buy it. He tracked down her last known address, a cheap apartment near the campus, and broke in late at night. The place was empty, abandoned, but in the bathroom, he found a mirror, cracked, its edges smeared with what looked like blood. On the floor was a single page, torn from a journal, the handwriting frantic. "She's here. She's always here. I can't escape the mirror." Elias took the page, his heart pounding. He was crossing lines now, breaking laws, but he didn't care. The truth was close. He could feel it, sharp and cold like glass. He confronted Morse again, this time at her home, a narrow townhouse on the city's edge. She answered the door in a silk robe, her silver hair loose, her eyes unreadable. "Detective Kane," she said, her voice smooth as ever. "You're persistent. What happened to Anna Gray?" Elias demanded, stepping inside without invitation. "What are you doing to these kids?" Morse didn't flinch. She gestured to a chair, but Elias remained standing. "Anna was troubled," she said. "She left the group, left the city. I can't help everyone, Detective." "And Lila? Was she troubled too? Or did you push her into that locked room?" Morse's smile was thin, almost pitying. "You see what you want to see, Detective. That's the problem with mirrors. They reflect your fears as much as your truths. Lila saw something she couldn't face. That's all." Elias slammed the torn journal page on the table. "This isn't therapy. This is control. What are you making them see?" Morse didn't look at the page. Her eyes stayed on his, steady, piercing. "Themselves," she said. "The parts they hide. The parts you hide too, Detective. Tell me, what do you see when you look in the mirror?" Elias felt a chill, her words cutting deeper than he expected. He left without another word, the page still in his pocket, her question echoing in his mind. Back at the precinct, he tried to bring the evidence to his captain, but the response was swift and brutal. "You're chasing ghosts, Kane," the captain barked. "Morse is a respected professor. You've got no proof, it's just a hunch and a dead girl's diary. Drop it or you're done." Elias didn't drop it. He couldn't. The mirrors were everywhere now. In his dreams, in the reflections of shop windows, in the polished steel of his badge, and in everyone he saw Lila's face, her eyes pleading, her blood pooling. He kept digging, kept watching Morse, kept reading the journals. But the deeper he went, the more the truth slipped away, like a reflection distorted by a crack in the glass. The night before his suspension, he stood in his apartment, staring into his bathroom mirror. His face looked back, tired, unshaven. But there was something else, a flicker, a shadow, just like in number 17. He blinked and it was gone, but the feeling stayed. The mirrors wasn't just a group, it was a trap, a game played with minds and reflections, and Elias was caught in it, just like Lila, just like Anna. The truth was there, in the glass, but he wasn't ready to see it, not yet. Chapter 5, The nameless recording. The city was a maze of reflections. Glass windows, wet pavement, the gleam of passing headlights. Elias Kane moved through it like a specter, his trench coat heavy with rain, his eyes catching every mirrored surface. Clara Henshaw's murder at number 17 had torn open the past, and the ghosts of Lila Voss, the mirrors, and Dr. Evelyn Morse were bleeding into the present. The knife, the locked room, the triangle of wounds. It was a message carved in blood, and Elias was running out of time to decipher it. Sleep had eluded him since his visit to Sarah Klein. Her words, something that knew things about us, clung to him, sharp as glass. The journals of Lila and Clara lay open on his desk, their words a chorus of fear, speaking of a presence in the mirror, a shadow self that knew their secrets. The mirrors wasn't just a group, it was a trap, and Elias felt his pull, a reflection he couldn't escape. That morning, a package had slipped under his door. No name, no address, just a manila envelope with a black USB drive inside, its surface scratched and worn. Elias sat at his desk, the drive plugged into his laptop, his finger hesitating over the play button. Anonymous deliveries were never innocent, but the need to know was stronger than caution. He clicked play. Static crackled, then a voice. Low, calm, female, cutting through the noise. Close your eyes, breathe deeply. Let the mirror show you what you hide. Elias's breath caught. Dr. Evelyn Morse, the woman who'd led the mirrors 10 years ago, her voice unmistakable, smooth, commanding, a blade wrapped in silk. The recording was a guided session, Morse's voice leading a group through a reflection ritual. Look into the glass, she said. She's there, your shadow self. Let her speak. Murmurs filled the background. Students, likely the mirrors, in that windowless room at Westbridge. Elias strained to hear them, hoping for Lila or Clara's voice, but they were too faint. The session lasted 15 minutes, Morse's words weaving a spell of self-discovery, laced with something darker, a manipulation that felt like a hook in the mind. The recording cut off mid-sentence. And when you see her, you'll... Static, then silence. Elias replayed it, scribbling notes. The USB had no metadata, no clue to its origin. It could be a decade old or brand new, but Morse's voice tied it to Lila, to Clara, to number 17. Someone had sent it to him, someone who knew he was digging. He felt watched, not by eyes but by reflections, as if the truth was hiding just beyond the glass. He checked the apartment building for clues. No cameras, no witnesses, just a broken buzzer and silent neighbors. The USB had appeared like a phantom, a reflection materializing from nowhere. Elias headed to the precinct, where Detective Marrow waited with a thin folder, Lila Voss's case file. It's sparse, Marrow warned, sliding it across. Suicide ruling, no suspects. You're chasing ghosts, Elias. Ghosts don't kill, Elias replied, taking the folder. He knew the precinct's game. Quick closures, no questions. It was why he'd left. Back home, he spread the file beside the journals. Lila's case was, as he remembered, rushed, incomplete, a locked room ignored. One detail caught his eye, a mention of Anna Gray, a missing student, listed as a person of interest but never pursued. Clara's journal referenced her. Anna stopped coming. The mirror showed her something she couldn't face. Elias's mind churned. Sarah Klein had spoken of a face in the mirror, not her own, during the last ritual. Now this recording, Morse's voice guiding her students into a psychological abyss. He searched for Morse online, finding only a 12-year-old conference paper. The mirror self, confronting the subconscious through reflective therapy. One line stood out. The mirror externalizes the shadow self, revealing truths that bind and break. The words echoed the journals, the recording, the murders. Elias played the USB again, catching a faint whisper near the end. Not Morse's, a young woman, trembling. She's here. She sees me. He rewound, cranking the volume. It was Lila, he was sure, her voice raw with fear. The recording cut off, leaving him with more questions than answers. He paced his apartment, avoiding the mirror on the wall. Its surface reflected the clutter. Books, mugs, the weight of old cases. but he felt something else in it, something watching. Morse's voice rang in his head. "What do you hide?" He shook it off, grabbing his coat. Sarah Klein knew more. She had to. She'd been at that final session, heard Lila's fear. He drove to the library, the rain turning the world into a blur of reflections. Sarah was behind the counter, her eyes widening as he approached. "I told you everything," she said, her voice tight. "Not enough," Elias said, holding up the USB. "This is Morse, guiding a session." "You were there. Listen." Sarah hesitated, then took him to a back room with a computer. She played the recording, her face paling as Morse's voice filled the space. At the whisper, "She's here. She sees me." She froze, tears in her eyes. "That's Lila," she whispered. "The last session?" She was terrified. We all were. Dr. Morse said it was normal, that the mirror showed our truths. But it wasn't truth. It was something else. "What happened after?" Elias pressed. "Lila stopped coming," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "We all did after she died. Morse vanished and the group collapsed. But I still see it sometimes, in mirrors and windows, her face, smiling, knowing." Elias left with a heavier burden. The recording was proof of a pattern, a manipulation that had broken Lila and Clara. Whoever sent it wanted him to keep digging, to face the mirror. As he drove back, the rain reflecting the city in fragments, he felt the truth closing in. A truth about the murders, about the mirrors, and maybe about himself waiting in the glass. Chapter 6. Mirror's Reflection. 10 years ago, Elias Kane still believed the world could be fixed. At 25, his detective badge was a shield, his resolve a fire not yet burned out. But Lila Voss's death had cracked that shield, and the deeper he dug, the more the cracks spread, reflecting a truth he wasn't ready to face. The mirrors, Dr. Evelyn Morse, the locked room at number 17. They were fragments of a puzzle that refused to fit, and Elias saw his own reflection in their jagged edges. The precinct buzzed with chaos. Phones ringing, cops shouting, coffee stains on every desk. Elias sat in a corner, Lila's case file open, her journal beside it. The suicide ruling was neat. A locked room, a knife, no struggle. But the details gnawed at him. 3 wounds in a triangle over her heart, too precise for despair. The mirror on the wall, reflecting the scene with cold clarity. And her journal, its pages screaming fear. She's in the glass. She knows what I did. He'd spent weeks chasing the mirrors, the psychology group Lila joined at Westbridge College. The journals of its members, Sarah Klein, Daniel Reed, described rituals, mirrors, a presence that wasn't them. Dr. Morse, their leader, had brushed off his questions with a smile, but her words lingered. "What do you see when you look in the mirror?" Elias didn't know, but the question felt like a blade. His break came in the evidence locker, late at night. Tucked in Lila's jacket pocket was a small key, wrapped in paper with one word, mirror. Its shape matched the locked drawer in the mirror's meeting room. Elias didn't report it. His captain had already warned him to drop the case. Instead, he went to the community center, slipping inside after dark. The building was silent, the air thick with dust. In the meeting room, his flashlight lit the round table, the journals, the empty chairs. The key turned in the drawer's lock, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a folded paper in Morse's neat handwriting, a script for a reflection ritual. "Stand before the mirror, speak your truth, let the shadow self emerge." The final line chilled him. "When she appears, she will judge you. You will act." Elias pocketed the script, his heart racing. This wasn't therapy, it was control, a manipulation of fragile minds. He drove to number 17, slipping through a loose back window. The second-floor room was unchanged, the bloodstain faded, the mirror unmoved. He stood before it, his reflection young but haunted. He read the ritual aloud, testing its words. Nothing happened, just him and the glass. Then he saw it, a faint mark under the rug. He pulled it back, revealing scratches in the wood, a triangle matching Lila's wounds. The mirror hung above, framing the marks like a stage. This wasn't suicide. Someone had planned it, staged it, using the house, the group, Lila's fear. Morse was the key, her calm, her questions, her control over the mirrors. Elias took the evidence to the precinct, the key and script in a sealed bag, his report typed. His captain, Hargrove, barely looked at it. "You're out of line, Kane," he growled. "The case is closed. Suicide. You've got no proof." "This is proof," Elias said, slamming the bag down. "The key, the ritual, the marks. Someone killed her, and Morse knows more." Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "Morse is a professor, not a killer. You're seeing things. Drop it or you're done." Elias didn't drop it. He confronted Morse at her office, unannounced, his anger barely contained. She sat grading papers, her silver hair catching the light. "Detective," she said, calm as ever, "you're persistent." "What's this?" Elias demanded, tossing the script onto her desk. "What were you doing to those kids?" Morse set her pen down, her eyes unreadable. "Helping them face themselves. The mirror is a tool, detective. It shows what they hide." "And Lila? Did it show her death?" Her smile was thin. "Lila saw what she needed to see. Sometimes the truth is too heavy." "I think you pushed her," Elias said, his voice low. "You broke her, and someone finished it." Morse didn't flinch. "Accusations reflect back, detective. What do you see in the mirror?" Her words cut deep, but he left, her question burning. He kept digging, pulling records on the mirror's members. Anna Gray, a missing student, was a ghost. No trace, just a name. Sarah and Daniel had quit after Lila's death, their fear palpable. But evidence started vanishing. The key, the script, parts of Lila's file. Whispers spread. Kane's obsessed. Kane's unstable. The final blow came a week later. Hargrove called him in, face red with anger. "You broke into Morse's office, tampered with evidence. Turn in your badge, Kane." Elias stood frozen. "I'm right," he said, his voice hollow. "You know it." Hargrove sighed, pity in his eyes. "You're young. You'll get over it. But you're done." Elias left his badge and walked out. The city a blur of reflections, windows, puddles, all showing a man who'd lost everything for a truth no one saw. He went to number 17 one last time, standing in the room, the mirror staring back. He wanted to smash it, break the spell, but he didn't. He looked into the glass, searching for the answer. For a moment he saw it, Lila's face, her eyes pleading, her lips moving silently. He blinked and it was gone, just his reflection, tired and defeated. He left, the mirror untouched, its weight a shard in his soul. In his apartment, he packed away Lila's journal, the photo of the mirrors, the fragments of a case he couldn't solve. He told himself he'd move on, but the mirror had shown him something. Not the truth, but his obsession, his cracks. And somewhere in the glass, Lila's killer was still watching, waiting for the next reflection to break. Chapter 7. Light in the killer's eyes. The city was a fractured mirror, its reflections jagged in the rain-soaked streets, the glass facades of buildings, the polished chrome of passing cars. Elias Kane moved through it like a man chasing his own shadow, his trench coat damp, his eyes haunted by the weight of 2 murders a decade apart. Clara Henshaw's death at number 17 had dragged him back to Lila Voss, to the mirrors, to Dr. Evelyn Morse's voice on that nameless USB drive. The journals, the recording, the triangle of wounds, they were shards of a truth he could almost grasp, but every reflection showed him something new, something he wasn't ready to see. The lead came from Sarah Klein's trembling admission. A surviving member of the Mirrors, Daniel Reed, was in a psychiatric facility 30 miles outside the city. Sarah had mentioned him in passing, her voice breaking as she recalled the group's final ritual, the one that left Lila terrified and Daniel unraveling. He saw something in the mirror, she'd said, something that broke him. Elias had tracked Daniel down through old college records, finding him at Willow Creek Behavioral Health, a place of sterile halls and locked doors, where the broken were kept out of sight. The drive was long, the road cutting through fog and barren fields. Elias's mind churned, replaying the USB recording. Morse's voice, Lila's whisper. "She's here. She sees me." The journals of Lila and Clara echoed the same fear, a presence in the glass that knew their secrets. The Mirrors wasn't just a therapy group, it was a machine, grinding minds into fragments, and Daniel might hold the key to its workings. Willow Creek loomed at the end of a gravel drive, its brick facade weathered, its windows barred. Elias signed in at the front desk, his private investigator's license enough to get him past the board receptionist. The air inside was heavy, antiseptic mixed with despair, the kind of place where hope went to die. A nurse led him to a small visiting room, its walls bare except for a single mirror, its surface smudged but unbroken. Elias avoided looking at it, his reflection a distraction he didn't need. Daniel Reed sat at a table, his lanky frame hunched, his eyes darting to the mirror before settling on Elias. He was older now, late 20s, but his face carried the weight of someone much older. Hollow cheeks, graying hair, hands that trembled even at rest. "You're the cop," he said, his voice soft, cracked. "The one who asked about Lila." "Ex-cop," Elias corrected, sitting across from him. "I'm here about the mirrors. Clara Henshaw's dead, same way Lila was. I need to know what you saw, Daniel. What broke you?" Daniel's eyes flicked to the mirror again, his fingers twitching. "You don't want to know," he whispered. "It's still there, in the glass." "Tell me," Elias said, his voice low but firm. "Lila saw something. Clara too. What was it?" Daniel leaned back, his gaze distant, as if seeing that windowless room at Westbridge a decade ago. "Dr. Morse called it therapy," he said. "Said the mirror would show us our true selves. We wrote journals, shared our fears, stood in a circle around the glass. She'd guide us, her voice. It got inside you, made you believe you needed to see it." "See what?" Elias pressed, leaning forward. Daniel's hands clenched. "Her, not me, not Lila, not Clara. A woman smiling, but her eyes, they knew everything. Things I never told anyone. Things I did when I was a kid. Things I was ashamed of. She judged me, and I couldn't look away." Elias felt a chill, the same one he'd felt in number 17, in front of every mirror since Lila's death. "Was it Morse in the mirror?" Daniel shook his head. "Number it wasn't human. It was something else. Morse said it was our shadow self, but it wasn't. It was alive, and it wanted something from us." Elias pulled out the USB drive, setting it on the table. "I got this. It's Morse, guiding a session. Lila's voice is on it, saying she saw something. Was this the ritual?" Daniel's eyes widened, his hands retreating from the drive like it was poison. "Don't play it," he said, his voice rising. "Don't listen to her. She'll get in your head again." "I already listened," Elias said. "Tell me what happened after that session." Daniel's breathing quickened, his eyes locked on the mirror. It was the last one. Lila was shaking, said she saw her. The woman in the glass. She wouldn't talk after that, just wrote in her journal, over and over. "She knows what I did." A week later, she was dead. I tried to quit, but Morse came to my dorm, said I couldn't run from the truth. I saw her again, in my bathroom mirror, smiling. I checked myself in here the next day. Elias's mind raced. The journals, the recording, Daniel's story. They all pointed to Morse, to her rituals, to a manipulation that drove her students to madness or death. "Where's Morse now?" he asked. Daniel shrugged, his eyes still on the mirror. "Gone. After Lila, she disappeared. But she's not gone, not really. She's in the glass, with her." He leaned forward, his voice a whisper. "We saw something in the mirror, and it's still alive." Elias felt the words like a blade, cutting through his resolve. He stood thanking Daniel, but the man didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the mirror, as if trapped by his own reflection. The nurse led Elias out, the facility's halls closing in, the mirror's presence lingering in his mind. Back in his car, Elias replayed Daniel's words, the USB drive heavy in his pocket. The Mirrors wasn't just a group, it was a cult, a psychological trap that broke its members and left bodies in its wake. Morse was the architect, but her disappearance after Lila's death suggested she wasn't working alone. Someone had sent the USB, someone who knew Elias was digging, and now Daniel's story added a new layer, a presence in the mirror, something beyond Morse's control. He drove back to the city, stopping at a diner to go through Lila's and Clara's journals again. The pages were a map of fear, their words overlapping. She's in the glass. She knows. Daniel's description matched, but it raised more questions. Was the woman a hallucination, a product of Morse's manipulation, or something worse, something real? Elias didn't believe in ghosts, but the mirrors in number 17, in the community center, in his own apartment, they all felt alive, watching, waiting. He checked the precinct's database on his laptop, searching for other members of the mirrors. Most were dead, missing, or like Daniel, broken. Anna Gray, the missing student from 10 years ago, was still a ghost. No records, no trace. But one name caught his eye. Emily Kane, his adoptive sister, listed as a Westbridge student during Lila's time. Elias froze, his coffee growing cold. Emily had never mentioned the mirrors, but she'd been at Westbridge, quiet, withdrawn, always writing in a journal she kept hidden. He hadn't thought to connect her to the case, not until now. He called her, his hands shaking as the phone rang. Emily answered, her voice soft, familiar. Elias, what's wrong? Were you in a group called The Mirrors? He asked, his voice tight. Silence, then a faint laugh. That old club? Yeah, I went to a few meetings. It was just kids writing about their feelings. Why? Did you know Lila Voss, Clara Henshaw? Another pause. Vaguely. They were in the group, I think. Elias, what's this about? He didn't answer, hanging up. Emily's voice was calm, but something in it, a hesitation, a shadow, set him on edge. He drove to her apartment, unannounced, the journals and USB in his bag. Emily opened the door, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes warm but guarded. You look like hell, she said, stepping aside. Elias didn't sit. Tell me about the mirrors, he said, setting the USB on the table. Everything. Emily frowned, picking up the drive. It was nothing, Elias. A psychology club. We wrote journals, talked about our fears. Dr. Morse was intense, but it was just therapy. Did you do the rituals? The mirrors? She nodded, her eyes flickering. Once or twice. It was weird staring into a mirror, talking to yourself. I stopped going. It wasn't for me. Did you see her? Elias asked, his voice low. The woman in the glass? Emily's face paled, but she shook her head. Number I didn't see anything. Elias, you're scaring me. He wanted to believe her, but the mirrors were everywhere. In her apartment, in his memory, in the case. He left, the USB back in his pocket, Emily's words ringing hollow. The truth was close, reflected in Daniel's fear, in the journals, in the recording. But it was distorted, like a face in a cracked mirror. And Elias felt it watching him, waiting for him to look too long. As he drove through the city, the rain started again, turning the world into a blur of reflections. The mirrors were closing in, showing him fragments of a truth he couldn't yet name, a truth about Clara, Lila, and maybe Emily, hiding in the glass. Chapter 8, Bloodless Cut. 10 years ago, Elias Kane was a man on the edge of breaking. At 25, his detective badge was gone, stripped away by a system that preferred clean reports to messy truths. Lila Voss's death, ruled a suicide in a locked room at number 17, had consumed him, its pieces refusing to fit. The triangle of knife wounds, the mirror's cold reflection, the journals of the Mirrors group filled with fear. Dr. Evelyn Morse, the group's leader, was the key, but her calm deflections and the precinct's resistance had left Elias with nothing but questions. Now suspended and untethered, he was crossing lines he'd sworn never to cross, chasing a truth that felt like a shadow in a cracked mirror. The city was a blur of rain and neon, its reflections taunting him in every window, every puddle. Elias sat in his car outside Morse's townhouse, a narrow building on the city's edge, its windows dark except for a faint glow on the second floor. He'd been warned to stay away. Hargrove's voice still rang in his ears. You're done, Kane. But the evidence he'd found, the key, the ritual script, the scratches forming a triangle under the rug at number 17, pointed to murder, not suicide, and Morse was at the center. He couldn't let it go, not when Lila's journal whispered, she's in the glass. She knows what I did. He waited until midnight, the street empty, the rain masking his steps. The lock on Morse's back door was old, easily picked with a tool he'd kept from his days on the force. Inside, the house was silent, smelling of lavender and old paper. His flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing a living room of sparse elegance. Bookshelves, a velvet chair, a single mirror above the fireplace, its frame carved with vines. Ilias avoided its gaze, his reflection a reminder of the man he was becoming. Reckless, obsessed, alone. He moved upstairs, his boots soft on the creaking steps. Morse's office was at the end of the hall, its door ajar. The room was cluttered, papers stacked on a desk, shelves lined with psychology texts, a corkboard pinned with notes and photos. Ilias scanned them, his heart quickening. One photo showed the Mirrors group, Lila, Sarah Klein, Daniel Reed, others, standing in a circle around a mirror, their faces pale, Morse at the center. Another was a sketch of a triangle, identical to the wounds on Lila's chest, with the word truth scrawled beside it. He rifled through the papers, finding more ritual scripts like the one from the community center. Face the mirror, speak your guilt. Let her see you. The words were clinical but chilling, as if Morse had designed a machine to break minds. He found a journal, not a student's, but Morse's own, its pages dense with observations. One entry caught his eye, dated a week before Lila's death. Lila is close to breaking. The mirror shows her what she fears most, her guilt, her past. She will act soon, as they all do. Ilias's hands shook as he read. Morse wasn't just guiding her students. She was pushing them, manipulating them into some kind of collapse. He tucked the journal into his coat, his mind racing. Was Lila's death her action? Had Morse driven her to it? Or was someone else involved, someone who used the ritual to stage a murder? He moved to the next room, a small study with a single painting on the wall. He froze, his flashlight beam trembling. The painting was a near-perfect depiction of number 17's crime scene. A woman in a white dress, sprawled on the floor, a knife in her chest, 3 wounds in a triangle. The mirror in the background reflected the scene, but the reflection was wrong. Where the woman's face should have been, there was another, blurred, smiling, its eyes dark and knowing. The paint was fresh, the colors vivid, as if it had been created after Lila's death, not before. Ilias's breath caught. This wasn't a coincidence. The painting was a blueprint, a taunt, a mirror of the crime he'd failed to solve. He stepped closer, searching for a signature, a date, anything. There was none, but the frame was identical to the mirror in number 17. Vines, twisting like veins. His reflection in the painting's glass overlay caught his eye, and for a moment, he thought he saw it move. Not his face, but hers. The woman from the journals, from Daniel's fear, from Lila's final words. He backed away, his heart pounding. The house felt alive, its shadows shifting, the mirrors watching. He searched the rest of the room, finding nothing but more books, more notes on the mirror self. He was about to leave when he heard a sound, a soft creak, like a door closing downstairs. Morse wasn't supposed to be home. He'd watched her leave hours ago. He killed the flashlight, his hand on the gun he no longer had a right to carry. The house was silent again, but the air had changed, heavy with presence. Ilias moved downstairs, his steps careful, his eyes scanning every corner. The living room was empty, the mirror above the fireplace reflecting only darkness. He checked the back door. It was still locked, undisturbed. But as he turned, he caught a glimpse in the mirror, a flicker, a shape gone before he could name it. His own reflection stared back, pale, unshaven, a man unraveling. He left the house. The painting's image burned into his mind. In his car, he spread Morse's journal beside Lila's, comparing their words. Morse's entries were calculated, describing each student's vulnerabilities. Sarah fears abandonment. Daniel hides guilt. Lila carries a secret she won't name. Lila's journal echoed the fear. She knows what I did. She's always watching. The painting tied it together, a visual confession of a crime planned, not predicted. Ilias drove to the precinct, his suspension be damned. He needed Hargrove to see this, to reopen the case. But when he arrived, the captain was waiting, his face a mask of fury. "You broke into her house, Kane," Hargrove said, holding up a complaint filed by Morse. "She's got a lawyer, a witness. You're not just done, you're lucky you're not in cuffs." "I found proof," Elias said, slamming the journal on the desk. "A painting, Hargrove. It's the crime scene, down to the wounds." Morse knew, maybe planned it. Hargrove didn't look at the journal. "You're seeing things, obsessions clouding your judgment. Get out, or I'll have you arrested." Elias stood frozen, the weight of his failure crushing him. He'd crossed every line, broken every rule, and still had nothing but a journal and a memory of a painting no one else would see. He left, the precinct's noise fading behind him, the city's reflections mocking him in every surface. Car windows, shop fronts, puddles. He drove to number 17, needing to see the room again, to confirm the painting's truth. The house was sealed, but Elias slipped through the back window, the air inside thick with dust and memory. The second-floor room was unchanged, the bloodstain faded, the mirror unmoved. He stood before it, the painting's image overlapping with reality. The woman, the knife, the triangle. He traced the scratches on the floor, still there, still matching. The mirror reflected him, but he felt it watching, not just his face, but something deeper, something he'd buried long ago. He thought of Morse's question. "What do you see in the mirror?" He saw a man who'd lost everything, his badge, his trust, his certainty, for a truth no one believed. But he also saw Lila, her eyes pleading, her blood pooling, and behind her, in the glass, a shadow, smiling, knowing. He blinked and it was gone, but the feeling stayed, a cut that drew no blood, but left him raw. Elias left the house, the journal in his coat, the painting's image a weight he couldn't shake. He went back to his apartment, packing away the evidence. Lila's journal, Morse's notes, the photo of the mirrors. He told himself he'd move on, but the mirrors followed him, in his dreams, in the city's reflections, in the questions he couldn't answer. The painting was a clue, a taunt, a mirror of a crime he'd failed to solve, and it pointed to Morse, or someone she'd shaped. As he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the mirror in his room caught the moonlight, its surface cold and unyielding. He didn't look at it, but he felt its gaze, a silent witness to his unraveling. The truth was there, in the glass, but it was fractured, distorted, a reflection of a man who'd seen too much and understood too little. And somewhere in the shadows of the mirrors, Lila's killer was still watching, waiting for the next cut to fall. Chapter 9, Truth in the Shards. The city was a kaleidoscope of broken reflections, its mirrors everywhere. Shop windows, rain-slicked streets, the glint of a stranger's watch. Elias Kane navigated it with the weariness of a man who'd spent a decade chasing shadows, each one leading back to number 17, to Lila Voss, to Clara Henshaw, to the mirrors. The USB recording, Daniel Reed's fractured testimony, the journals filled with fear. They were pieces of a puzzle that cut deeper with every step. Now the mirrors were closing in, and Elias felt their gaze cold and unyielding, showing him a truth he wasn't sure he could face. Daniel's words at Willow Creek haunted him. "We saw something in the mirror, and it's still alive." The presence in the glass, described by Lila, Clara, Sarah, and now Daniel, wasn't just a hallucination. It was a weapon wielded by Dr. Evelyn Morse, whose voice on the USB drive had guided her students into madness. But Morse was gone, vanished after Lila's death, and the trail was cold. Elias needed to know who else had been in the mirrors, who else had seen the woman in the glass, and who might still be alive to tell him. He started with the names from the journals and Daniel's account. There were 12 members in the mirrors, all Westbridge students, all young, all vulnerable. Elias spent days cross-referencing records, obituaries, and missing persons reports. The results were grim. Sarah Klein was alive, barely, her fear keeping her tethered to a quiet life. Daniel Reed was locked in Willow Creek, his mind shattered. Anna Gray had vanished, her absence a ghost in the case. 3 others were dead, Car accidents, overdoses, a suicide that mirrored Lila's too closely. 2 more were missing, their trails ending abruptly. One was in a coma, a hit-and-run victim from 5 years ago. The pattern was clear. The mirrors didn't just break minds, it broke lives. Elias sat in his apartment, the journals spread across his desk, a map of the dead, and disappeared. The rain outside tapped the windows, each drop a distorted reflection of the city's lights. He traced the names, his finger stopping on one he'd overlooked. Emily Kane, his adoptive sister. She'd admitted to attending a few meetings, downplaying it as a harmless club, but her name appeared in Clara's journal, a fleeting mention. Emily was quiet, but she saw it too. She stopped coming after the last ritual. The realization hit like a blade. Emily had been there, in that windowless room, staring into the mirror with Lila and Clara. She'd seen the woman, or claimed she hadn't, her voice too calm when he'd asked. Elias's hands shook as he grabbed his phone, pulling up her number but not dialing. He thought of her apartment, her guarded eyes, the journal she'd kept as a student, always hidden from him. He'd never connected her to the case, not until Daniel's words, not until the list of the dead left her as the sole survivor. He drove to her apartment, the USB drive and journals in his bag, the city's reflections blurring past. Emily answered the door, her dark hair loose, her smile fading when she saw his face. "Elias, what's wrong?" she asked, stepping aside. He didn't sit, his eyes scanning the room. Bookshelves, a coffee table, a small mirror on the wall, its surface catching the lamplight. "You were in the mirrors," he said, his voice low, steady. "Not just a few meetings. You were there for the rituals with Lila, with Clara. Why didn't you tell me?" Emily's face paled, but her voice stayed even. "I told you it was nothing, a stupid club. I went a few times, got bored, left. Why does it matter?" "Because they're all dead," Elias said, pulling out the journals. "Or missing, or broken. Except you. You're the only one left, Emily. What did you see in the mirror?" She crossed her arms, her eyes flicking to the mirror on the wall. "Nothing. It was just therapy, Elias. Morse made us talk to ourselves, write about our feelings. I didn't see any woman, any shadow. You're chasing ghosts." Elias stepped closer, his voice hardening. "Lila wrote about you, Clara too. They said you saw it, that you stopped coming after the last ritual. What happened that night?" Emily's composure cracked, her hands trembling. "I don't remember," she said, her voice rising. "It was 10 years ago. I was a kid, Elias. I went to a few meetings, stared at a mirror, wrote some nonsense. I didn't see anything. I didn't kill anyone." The word hung between them. Kill. Elias hadn't said it, but it was there, a reflection of his fear. He pulled out the USB drive, holding it up. "This is Morse guiding a session. Lila's voice is on it, saying she saw her. Daniel Reed's in a psych ward, saying the same thing. They're all gone, Emily, but you're here. Why?" She backed away, her eyes wide. "You think I'm involved? I'm your sister, Elias. I was 18, scared, just like them. I quit the group, I moved on. You're the one who can't let go." He wanted to believe her, but the mirrors were everywhere, in her eyes, in the journals, in the case. He set the journals on the table, opened to pages mentioning her name. "Read them," he said. "Tell me they're lying." Emily didn't touch the journals. She turned away, her reflection caught in the wall mirror, her face a mask of fear and something else. Guilt, maybe, or defiance. "I can't help you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, Elias, stop this." He left, the door closing softly behind him, the weight of her words heavier than the journals in his bag. The rain had stopped, leaving the city slick and reflective, every surface a mirror showing him fragments of the truth. Emily was hiding something, but he didn't know what, fear, shame, or something darker. The mirrors had marked her, just as it had marked Lila and Clara, and her survival wasn't luck. It was a clue. Back in his apartment, Elias dug deeper, pulling every record he could find on the mirror's members. He hacked into Westbridge's old student database, his PI skills bending the law but not breaking it. The group's roster was sparse, but Emily's name was there, listed as a member for 3 months, overlapping with Lila's final weeks. A photo from a campus event showed her with the group, standing beside Morse, her face blank, her eyes fixed on a mirror in the background. He cross-referenced the dates of the deaths and disappearances. Anna Gray vanished a week after the last ritual. 2 others died within a year. Accidents, the report said, but the timing was too neat. The coma victim, hit by a car, had been a member too, her accident 3 days after Clara's graduation. The pattern was deliberate, a culling of those who'd seen too much, known too much. But Emily had walked away, untouched, her life quiet but intact. Elias played the USB recording again, Morse's voice filling the room, Lila's whisper cutting through. "She's here. She sees me." He closed his eyes, picturing the ritual. Students in a circle, the mirror reflecting their fear, Morse's words guiding them into the dark. Emily had been there staring into the glass, but she claimed she saw nothing. He didn't believe her, not anymore. He drove to the precinct, hoping Marrow had dug up more on Morse. The detective was at his desk, a new file waiting. "You're not gonna like this," Marrow said, sliding it over. Morse's last known address was a P.O. box, closed 10 years ago. No family, no social media, no trace. But we found this, her research grant from Westbridge, funded by a private group called Veritas. Elias opened the file, scanning the grant details. Veritas was obscure, its mission vague. Advancing psychological truth through experimental therapy. The grant funded the mirrors covering the community center, supplies, even Morse's salary. But Veritas itself was a dead end. No website, no public records, just a name tied to a bank account that closed when Morse vanished. "Someone's covering their tracks," Elias said, his voice low. "Morse, Veritas, the mirrors. They're all connected." Marrow nodded, his eyes tired. "Be careful, Elias. This feels bigger than one killer." Elias left, the file under his arm, his mind turning to Emily. She was the last piece, the survivor who didn't fit. He drove back to number 17, the house looming in the dusk, its windows like eyes. He didn't go inside. He just stood on the street, staring at the second-floor window, where the mirror had watched 2 murders. The reflection in the glass was faint, but he felt it. A presence, not his own, watching back. He thought of the painting in Morse's house, a decade ago, its image identical to Lila's crime scene. He thought of Daniel's fear, Sarah's silence, Emily's lies. The truth was there, in the shards of the mirrors, in the reflections he couldn't escape. Emily had seen something, done something, and her survival was the final clue. But as he stood before the house, the mirror's gaze heavy on him, Elias felt a deeper fear. Not of Emily, but of himself, of what he might see if he looked too long. The city's reflections followed him as he drove away, each one a piece of the truth, fractured and distorted. The mirrors had claimed its victims, but Emily was still here, living with him, her secrets hidden behind a smile. And in the glass, something was still alive, waiting for the final shard to fall. Chapter 10. The Shattered Mirror. The city was a hall of mirrors, each reflection sharper than the last, windows glinting in the dusk, puddles fracturing the skyline, the glass of Elias Kane's own eyes staring back from every surface. He'd spent a decade chasing the truth behind Lila Voss's death, and now Clara Henshaw's murder had dragged him back to number 17, to the mirrors, to Dr. Evelyn Morse's voice whispering through a USB drive. The journals, Daniel Reed's broken testimony, the painting in Morse's house, they were shards of a truth that cut deeper with every step. And now the final shard. Emily, his adoptive sister, the sole survivor of the mirrors, her secrets hidden in the glass. Elias stood outside her apartment, the rain a soft hiss against the pavement. The journals, the USB, the files on Veritas, they all pointed to her, the last piece of a puzzle he'd been too blind to see. Emily had been there, in that windowless room at Westbridge, staring into the mirror with Lila and Clara. She'd claimed ignorance, but her name was in their journals, her presence in the group's final ritual undeniable. The others were dead, missing, or broken, except her. Elias's hands shook as he knocked, the weight of suspicion heavier than the gun in his coat. Emily opened the door, her dark hair loose, her eyes wary but warm. "Elias," she said, stepping aside. You look like you haven't slept in days. He didn't smile, his gaze sweeping the room. The small mirror on the wall caught the lamplight, its surface a silent witness. We need to talk, he said, setting the journals on the table. About the mirrors, about Lila, about Clara. Emily's face tightened, but her voice stayed calm. I told you, I barely knew them. I went to a few meetings, that's all. Stop lying, Elias said, his voice low, sharp. He opened Clara's journal to a marked page. You're here, Emily. Emily saw it too. She stopped coming after the last ritual. Lila wrote the same. You were there when they saw her, the woman in the mirror. What did you see? Emily backed away, her eyes flicking to the mirror. Nothing, she said, her voice trembling now. It was just a stupid club, Elias. Morse made us write, talk, look at ourselves. I didn't see anything. He pulled out the USB drive, holding it like a weapon. This is Morse, guiding the ritual. Lila's voice is on it, terrified. Daniel reads in a psych ward, saying he saw a woman who knew his secrets. They're all gone, Emily. Dead, missing, broken. Except you. Why? Her hands clenched, her composure cracking. You think I killed them? I'm your sister, Elias. I was 18, scared, just like them. I quit the group. I survived. That's not a crime. Elias stepped closer, his voice cold. Surviving's not luck. Not when everyone else is gone. You saw something in that mirror and you're hiding it. Tell me or I'll find out myself. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but there was something else. Fear, yes, but also defiance. She turned to the mirror, her reflection pale, her lips moving silently. You want the truth? She whispered. Fine, I saw her, the woman in the glass. She wasn't me. She was everything I wasn't. Strong, cruel, knowing. Morse said she was my shadow self, but she was more. She told me what to do. Elias's heart pounded. What did she tell you? Emily's voice broke, her words spilling out. To act. To make it right. Lila was weak, breaking under the weight of her guilt. Clara was the same years later. They saw her too, and they couldn't handle it. Morse taught us to face our truths, but the mirror, it showed us something else. It showed us her. Elias felt a chill, the room shrinking around him. You killed them, he said, not a question. You staged the locked rooms, the knives, the triangles? Why? Emily's tears fell, but her eyes were hard now, reflecting the lamplight like glass. They were going to tell. Lila was going to the police saying Morse controlled us. Clara was writing about it, years later, digging up the past. I had to stop them. Morse told me how to make it look like suicide, how to lock the doors, how to carve the truth into their hearts. Elias's hand went to his gun, but he didn't draw it. Morse is gone, Emily. She disappeared 10 years ago. You're saying she's still controlling you? Emily laughed, a hollow sound. She's not gone. She's in the mirror, Elias, always watching, always guiding. She chose me because I was strong enough to act, to carry out her truth. He stared at her, his sister, his family, now a stranger. The mirrors had warped her, turned her into a killer under Morse's spell. But as he looked at her, the final piece clicked into place. A memory buried deep, a reflection he'd refused to see. He stepped back, his voice barely a whisper. It wasn't just them, was it? It started before the mirrors. Before Lila, Emily's eyes widened, her face paling. What are you talking about? Elias's mind reeled, the memory surfacing like a body from dark water. He was 10, Emily 8, foster kids in a house that wasn't home. A boy, older, cruel, had cornered them in the backyard, his hands rough, his laughter sharp. Elias had pushed him, hard, too hard. The boy fell, his head striking a rock, blood pooling in the grass. They'd run, told no one, buried the truth, but Emily had seen, had known, had carried it with her. You remember, Elias said, his voice breaking. The boy in the foster home. I killed him, Emily. An accident. But I did it. That's what the mirror showed you, isn't it? My guilt, my secret. Emily's tears stopped, her face a mask of realization. You, she whispered. It was always you. The mirror showed me that day. The blood, your face. Morse said it was my truth, my strength, to protect you. She said I had to act, to keep the secret safe. Elias's legs buckled, but he stayed upright, the mirror on the wall reflecting them both. Brother and sister, bound by a crime long buried. Morse used you, he said. She saw your guilt, our guilt, and twisted it. The mirrors was her game, Emily. She made you kill to protect me, to protect a lie. Emily shook her head, her voice rising. Number, it was real. The woman in the mirror, she was real, Elias. She told me to do it, to make it right. Lila, Clara, they were threats. They'd expose us. I had to. He saw it now, the full reflection. His childhood accident had shattered them both, a crack that Morse had exploited. The mirrors wasn't just a cult, it was a mirror of their past, reflecting a guilt that drove Emily to kill, to stage murders that echoed Lila's, to carve triangles as a twisted homage to their shared secret. Morse had seen it, used it, turned Emily into her weapon. Elias drew his gun, his hand steady but his heart breaking. It's over, Emily. You're not protecting me anymore. You're killing for her, for a ghost in the glass. Emily lunged, not for him, but for the mirror, her hands clawing at the glass. She's here, she screamed, her reflection wild, distorted. She sees us both. The mirror cracked under her fists, shards falling to the floor, each one reflecting a fragment of her face, his face, their past. Elias grabbed her, pulling her back, the gun still in his hand. There's no one there, he said, his voice raw. It's just us, Emily. Just us. She collapsed, sobbing, the fight draining out of her. Elias called Marrow, his voice hollow as he reported her confession. The police came, the apartment a blur of lights and voices, Emily taken away in cuffs, her eyes fixed on the broken mirror. Elias stayed behind, staring at the shards, each one reflecting a piece of the truth. His crime, her crimes, a cycle of guilt started by a boy's blood in the grass. He drove to number 17 one last time, the house dark, its windows like eyes. The second-floor room was unchanged, the blood stain faded, the mirror still whole. He stood before it, his reflection older, broken, a man who'd killed and caused killing, his guilt the spark that lit the fire. The woman in the glass wasn't there, never had been. It was just him, Emily, and the secrets they'd buried. He raised his fist, ready to shatter the mirror, to break the cycle. But he stopped, his hand trembling. The truth was in the shards, not the glass. He turned away, leaving the house, the mirror, the past. The city's reflections followed him, but they were empty now, showing only a man who'd seen too much, known too much, and lost everything to find it.